Aloha, everyone. Welcome back. Our next presenter is Carmelita Villalobos, excuse me. She will be introduced by her mentor, Lauren Van Hukelum, who is the Senior Response Coordinator at Keikaiola and oversees the monitoring of the endangered Hawaiian monk seal population on Hawai'i Island. She runs the center's 24-hour hotline for reporting seal sightings around the island and coordinates a team of approximately 125 volunteers. These volunteers conduct research and population assessments on a daily basis. So please join me in welcoming Lauren to the Zoom microphone.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello, everybody. It's my privilege to be introducing Carmelita Villalobos, who was an intern with us during the 2021 year. And she came at a great moment for us, right as the pandemic was kind of in full swing. We actually had to kind of slow down on our volunteer efforts, and Carmelita came in and she was able to help us out as essentially, a staff member who were able to get special permissions to go out and monitor our Hawaiian monk seal populations on the island. So she's done a lot of things for us. She helped out with our education department that went virtual. She's actually helped out with some of our transport of Hawaiian monk seals from our hospital. But the core of what she did with us was through our response program, out in the field, working with other volunteers. And towards the end of her time with us, she actually became a dispatcher as well. So really helping with the efforts around response as we cover all of the coastline on the Big Island for any Hawaiian monk seal that shows up on the beach and is reported. And another great thing that she did with us that was invaluable is she created a Hawaiian monk seal ID sheet. So she basically all of the different identifiers for our Hawaiian monk seals on the island. And I think she's going to talk a lot more about that in her presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Carmelita.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, let me get this pulled up. Okay, mahalo again, Lauren, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And aloha all, and thank you for joining me for my talk today about Hawaiian monk seals and their population on Hawai'i Island. I am so honored to be able to wrap up this day of amazing presentations. I am truly proud of all of my classmates, all of whom who have made my success as a professional intern possible. Since last September, I have been working at Keikaiola, which is an extension of the Marine Mammal Center, to monitor, protect, and educate others on the importance of Hawaiian monk seals in Hawaii. This has truly been a life-changing experience as I had the chance to work with an endangered species, be around the most passionate volunteers, and receive the guidance of a mentor who helped me realize and begin to achieve my professional goals. I will begin my talk today by speaking about what brought me to Hawaii and where I initially started my internship work at the beginning of this program. I will discuss how this brought me to the various jobs I held during this past year. I will then begin speaking about my current internship with Keikaiola by providing background on Hawaiian monk seals, introduce the Marine Mammal Center and Keikaiola, and discuss my role there. I will then lay out the objectives of my internship, the approach I took to accomplish my goals, and the deliverables I was able to create. So coming to Hawaii was a bit of a leap of faith for me. And by a bit, I mean, it was a huge jump. All I knew before coming to the island was that I loved the ocean and I wanted to spend my life working to conserve it. So my 21-year-old self convinced me that moving to an island 4,000 miles away from my home was the only way to do it. And so I moved to Hilo. I fell in love with sharks while on a trip to the Bahamas with the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago and was determined to work with them. So on the first day of our internship class, I expressed my interest and Lisa Canale connected me with Hawaii Uncharted Research Collective. Their mission is to conduct scientific research on whale sharks and merge this with community engagement, which seemed to fit in well with my professional objectives. So for about 6 months, I worked with HERC to develop curriculum for Hawaii schools, grades K through 12. My goals here were to develop interactive and educational activities to teach whale shark biology and the importance of their presence in Hawaiian waters. With this all happening during the start of COVID, the idea was that I would make all of these deliverable through Zoom and be accessible to teachers as a lesson plan that they could complete on their own if needed. Although I have a background in substitute teaching, writing curriculum was not something that I was comfortable with or even had experience doing. But this internship allowed me the creative freedom to explore my inner educator and get comfortable with developing fun content for kids. This experience helped prepare me for the 2 jobs I held during my second year of TCBES. So first I was hired at Imiloa Astronomy Center as a teaching assistant for their Halal Lamaku program, which provided students grades K through 5 with support during the pandemic. We made sure students stuck to their online class schedules and also provided them with place-based activities that allowed them to engage off of their computer screens. After I completed that, I started at the Center for Community Engagement here at Hilo, where myself and 2 other TCBES students wrote and delivered 3 STEM-based activities to middle schoolers via Zoom. Our goal here was to engage middle schoolers in STEM activities that followed next generation science standards to get them excited about Science Olympiad. Overall, my experience with Hawaii Uncharted Research Collective made me a better science communicator and educator, which allowed me to be successful in these 2 positions. Although I enjoy working with students and appreciate the skills I got out of these experiences, I really didn't want education to be the main focus of my career after graduate school. I was looking for a more hands-on internship, which would take me closer to the ocean and help me find where I belonged in the robust field of conservation. And so I wrapped up my internship with HERC in August, and Lisa almost immediately connected me with my current mentor, Lauren, who is the Response and Operation Coordinator at Keikaiola. I was able to start the onboarding process at Keikaiola before the semester even began. This was interesting because Keikaiola was operating in such a different way than it normally does because of the COVID-19 shutdown. For those of you who are unaware, Hawaii shut down all the beach parks, so there were no people on the beaches. Places that were normally packed with people were completely bare. For this reason, volunteers that were usually needed daily to respond to seals and conduct outreach shifted to doing voluntary beach surveys, as they were only needed to conduct visual checks of the seals. Even with this being the case, I was immediately able to become involved in an internship that provided me with hands-on experience working in the field of conservation. Before I get into what I did, I just want to give some background on Hawaiian monk seals. Hawaiian monk seals are one of the most endangered seals worldwide and are the most endangered pinniped found in US waters. They are one of only 2 monk seal species, the other of which I believe is found in the Caribbean. Although endemic to the Hawaiian archipelago, many people have the misconception that they were introduced and are considered a nuisance by fishers and beachgoers alike. Hawaiian monk seals were around before the arrival of the Polynesians in numbers upwards of 15,000, but upon their arrival, they were hunted and killed to near extinction. Hawaiian monk seals were extirpated early, so people did not grow up with them around the island, and they were misinformed when they started to be present in the main Hawaiian Islands. Misconceptions and poor outreach led many to hate them, even going as far as killing them for no reason. The result is that today there are only 1,400 monk seals left in the entire Hawaiian archipelago, 300 being found in the main Hawaiian Islands and only 10 being found on Hawai'i Island. Hawaiian monk seals are named as such because of the way the skin on their necks folds like a monk's hood. They are born black but get dark gray to brown on their dorsal side and light gray to yellowish brown on their ventral sides as adults. So this is a mom next to her pup, which really shows the contrast in color and size. Full-grown adults weigh anywhere between 400 and 600 pounds and can live to be between 25 and 30 years old. Hawaiian monk seals spend their time between the terrestrial and marine environments, with 2/3 of that time being at sea. In the ocean, seals can be found foraging or traveling and rest molt and pup while on land. This number kind of shocked me when I first found it out because as a volunteer, we spend so much time looking for these seals on land, and it seems like they're always there. The time spent on land is vital to their survival and is why the work of Ke Kaiola volunteers is always needed. During their time on the terrestrial environment, protection is needed so that the public respects these behaviors. I will now dive into these behaviors a little bit further. So when I encounter a monk seal, this is usually what they look like. Most of the time with monk seals, my time is honestly spent watching them sleep. So one of the most frequent questions I get asked is how long they'll rest, and it honestly depends on the day and on the seal. Time on the beach can range anywhere from a few minutes to an entire day. I also get asked if they like to hang out in the same spots, and I will say that each seal has its own distinct personality and has beach preferences just like you and I do. Monk seals are mostly solitary and are almost always found alone. But I used to say that they were always found alone, but of course I had to eat my words just a few weeks ago when I said that while I was out on response, and then 2 seals rolled up on the beach together. Anyways, for this reason, even though there are only 10 seals on Hawai'i Island, a very large volunteer force is needed to monitor them since they are rarely found in groups, meaning that if we have 4 seals hauled out in a day, it usually means that they are in 4 different locations and require 4 different volunteers per shift. Similar to the resting behavior, every year monk seals undergo a catastrophic molt where they shed their top layer of fur and skin. This takes about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the seal's age, weight, gender, and female's reproductive status. This is done on land, and again, the seals are mostly sleeping and scratching off their old fur. Seals won't return to the water until they are completely finished, or will do so only briefly. Lastly, female monk seals give birth or pup on land. Female monk seals can start reproducing as early as age 5 and usually do so until around the age of 10. Gestation takes around 10 to 11 months, and during this time, mothers put on extra weight to be able to support their pups before weaning. Pups are born at around 25 to 30 pounds and are weaned between 110 and 175 pounds. This means that in a short 5 to 7 weeks, pups gain an impressive amount of weight, which they gain solely from their mother's milk. Mothers do not return to sea to eat during this time and lose weight while the pup gains it. Once weaned, monk seals are generalist feeders, meaning that they eat anything from fish to squid, octopuses, eels, and crustaceans. They forage at the sea, in the sea, mostly at or near the sea floor, which is when their diving ability comes in handy. So they can hold their breaths for up to 20 minutes and dive as deep as 1,800 feet. Generally, though, they take dives around 6 minutes to 200 feet. Although it is thought by some that monk seals create competition for fishers, they don't actually target locally popular game fish. Monk seals also travel in the water. They don't complete a seasonal migration, but can be known to travel hundreds of miles up and down the Hawaiian archipelago. It is not uncommon for seals to hang out around one island all year and then travel to another island to pup. For example, we have a seal who hangs around Hawai'i Island for most of the year, but then travels to Kauai to pup, and she actually just did this a few weeks ago. And I included this picture even though it's blurry because there is a monk seal right there in the water. Sadly, there are many threats to the Hawaiian monk seal population, and unsurprisingly, the threats vary by area along the archipelago. In the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, entanglement is by far the largest threat. Derelict fishing gear is commonly found in those waters, and monk seals, being the curious creatures they are, often find themselves entangled in gear. Food limitations due to overfishing are also a threat, in addition to shark predation on pups. In the main Hawaiian Islands, fisheries interactions, human interaction, and infectious disease are the top threats to Hawaiian monk seals, and I will discuss these in further detail. Hawaiian monk seals have the highest entanglement rate of any other pinnipeds. In the northwestern Hawaiian Islands alone, 800 metric tons of debris have been removed since 1996, and I don't even think that's the most up-to-date number. Although this is less common on the main Hawaiian Islands, we still see this occurring along with increased hookings due to recreational fishing. This is our youngest seal on the island, and you can see in this photo that he has 2 rings around his neck, which is most likely the result of some kind of interaction with marine debris. Fortunately, he shed whatever it was on his own, and it didn't seem to affect his health at all. More likely a threat to seals on the main Hawaiian Islands is recreational fishing. Seals are curious and also aren't afraid of helping themselves to a free snack. So this brings up the issue of unintentional hookings. We try to encourage fishers to pay attention while they are fishing and bring up their line for a few minutes if a monk seal is in the area. We also encourage the use of barbless hooks to decrease the harm done to seals if they are to be accidentally hooked. A barbless circle hook is a regular circle hook with a flattened barb. Research has shown that barbless circle hooks work just as well as barbed hooks, but because they are easier to remove or are able to be self-shed, they minimize impacts on protected species such as monk seals. We usually don't try to remove hooks from seals and simply monitor them to make sure that they lose them on their own and do not develop an infection. As mentioned above, the seals and humans share beach spaces. So with an increasing human population on Hawai'i Island, habitat competition has become an issue for seals trying to access beaches. Overcrowded beaches make it difficult for seals to haul out, and when they do, they are often met with human interaction. Disturbance such as people getting too close changes the way that the seals behave, which isn't good for their health. I really like this picture because it seems like a harmless picture of a resting monk seal, but there are many things wrong with it. So this picture was taken from way too close of a distance. You can see that the animal is pretty aware of the camera and is looking right at it. The simple act of grabbing the seal's attention is disrupting its normal behavior. I actually responded to this seal and almost stepped on her because the person taking me to her did not understand how far away we should be from her, and I didn't see her. There have been instances where people will go as far as killing seals to prevent them from eating fish, and in instances for no apparent reason at all. Feeding is also an issue in the main Hawaiian Islands, but to my knowledge, it is not a huge issue on Hawai'i Island. So the last big threat on the main Hawaiian Islands is infectious disease. If you live on Hawai'i Island, you may be aware of the large feral cat population. Cats spread toxoplasmosis, which can be deadly to Hawaiian monk seals, as there is currently no treatment or cure. Monk seals may not directly interact with cats, but they can be exposed to the same beach areas, making them vulnerable to the disease. It is clear that the Hawaiian monk seals have faced numerous stressors which have relentlessly threatened their population numbers. Luckily, the Marine Mammal Center, or TMMC, has been working to combat these stressors since it opened its doors in 1975. To date, the Marine Mammal Center has rescued more than 2,400 marine mammals throughout the California coastline and the Hawaiian Island chain. TMMC has been a trailblazer when it comes to ocean conservation, as it has been focusing on marine mammal rescue, research, outreach, and veterinary medicine for decades. The ocean is in need of our help because it is suffering from a multitude of anthropogenic threats, including marine debris, overfishing, and rising temperatures, each of which have threatened the livelihood of the organisms that call the ocean home, including Hawaiian monk seals. The main mission of the Marine Mammal Center is to advance global ocean conservation through rescue and rehabilitation, scientific research, and education to combat the negative effects of the changing ocean on marine life. All of this work is possible because of the more than 1,300 volunteers that donate their time to responding to the animals and conducting public outreach efforts. In July of 2014, the Marine Mammal Center opened a state-of-the-art hospital and visitor center on Hawai'i Island named Ke Kaiola, or the Healing Sea. And this facility was built to help save the Hawaiian monk seal population and is the only facility in the world of its kind. Ke Kaiola is equipped with medical facilities and rehabilitation areas for sick and injured seals. Of the approximately 1,400 monk seals in the wild today, it is estimated that nearly 30% are alive directly because of the conservation efforts by NOAA and the Marine Mammal Center. Seals all along the Hawaiian archipelago that need care are sent to Ke Kaiola for rehabilitation, since it is the only facility built specifically with Hawaiian monk seals in mind. The work of the dedicated staff members and volunteers make Ke Kaiola a leader in animal care and an asset to the Hawaiian monk seal population throughout the Hawaiian archipelago. In addition to animal care and rehabilitation, Ke Kaiola has around 50 active outreach volunteers that dedicate their time to protecting the Hawaiian monk seals out in the wild. The Marine Mammal Center supports a monk seal hotline, which takes calls every day regarding Hawaiian monk seals. TMMC relies on the public to report monk seal sightings since our seals are tagged but not tracked. My role at the Marine Mammal Center is Hawaiian monk seal conservation response intern. For about 8 months, I worked with Lauren to gain hands-on experience working in response and outreach. In the beginning of my internship, which again was during the COVID-19 lockdown, there were no people on the beaches and really no reason to respond to seals. Lauren was therefore able to bring me around to different beaches on the west side of the island and taught me how to access the different locations, showed me where seals like to haul out at, and gave me tips on how to identify the different seals. Even though response wasn't necessarily needed, it was still vital to monitor the seals to make sure that they were healthy. As I got more comfortable with the beach locations and with identifying seals, and as COVID-19 restrictions began to lift and people were returning to the beaches, I was able to begin my role more fully as an intern. My responsibilities at the Marine Mammal Center began to include response and outreach, dispatch, volunteer training, and then creating deliverables to assist with seal identification. At the beginning of my internship, I was able to work 2 shifts per week, and it mostly worked out that I would shadow Lauren for one of those shifts and then be on my own the next day. Volunteer shifts at the Marine Mammal Center go from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and are split up into 3 sections, so shifts lasted for 4 hours each. In the morning, Lauren would send out a text telling each volunteer where to go, depending on if people called to report seals that day or not. I would then hop in the truck and head to wherever I was needed for the day, or if there were no calls, I would head to beaches that we frequently see seals at to survey the area for them. Once a seal was located, hauled out on a beach, I would start my response. With the number of people on the beaches nearly back to pre-COVID times, I would begin by assessing whether a seal awareness zone, or SAS, was needed. A seal awareness zone designates a 50-foot perimeter around the seal on all sides, the goal of which is to give the seal space so as to not disturb it. You can imagine that this is a very large area because each side of the seal needs to have this space. And I swear our seals love to cause a commotion, so they seem to always pick high traffic areas to haul out on. A lot of the time we find seals already plopped on the beach in the morning, but there are many instances where seals will haul out in the middle of the day when there are a ton of people on the beach already. And it is my job to clear the area and set up the SAS. This means grabbing signs such as the one shown on the slide, which relay our message, and rope to prevent people from accidentally walking into the seal. So this is a better example of a seal awareness zone that Lauren and I set up together. The seal is clearly resting and is unbothered by our presence, which he he seems not to notice us at all. My next step here would be to identify the seal. So to ID seals, we look for any bleach marks, scars, or tags that are unique to the individual. The seals born on Hawai'i Island are tagged with bright orange tags, which can be read with the help of binoculars, but scars and marks are also extremely helpful to aid in ID. Once the seal is identified, the information along with any visual health assessments we have made is reported back to Lauren on the response phone. When all that is said and done, I more than likely have a crowd already ready with questions for me. Outreach is a huge part of my internship and is so important to the success of TMMC. It is during outreach that I am able to educate the public on the importance of Hawaiian monk seals and their conservation, tell them what they can do to help seals, and answer any questions that they may have. My goal is to have a positive interaction with the public every conversation I have, which has taught me how to listen to people and mold my conversations around what they want to get out of the interaction. In addition to this, it is important for me to stay with the seal to make sure that people are aware of it. You may think that people will read the signs and stay back, but there have been many instances almost every day where people are simply not paying attention and walk right through the signs. More often though, people just love to learn about our seals, so I'm there to talk story with them and answer any questions they may have. By doing this, I ensure that beach patrons keep their distance so as to not disturb the seal, and I also get to educate the public on monk seals. Although it is my top priority to protect the seals, I really want to make sure that people have a positive experience with me so that they learn to care about the seals just as much as I do. As schoolwork picked up and I went down to only one shift per week, I took on additional responsibilities at this time. I started running the response phone on Saturdays, which has strengthened my customer service and communication skills. People call or text us at 808-987-0765 when they spot a monk seal. I field these calls, gather information from the caller, and decide if a volunteer is needed for a response or not. Since I live in Hilo and can't easily access Cape Kaiola to pick up the dispatch phone, we started using an app called Google Voice. What this app does is forward all calls that come into the actual response phone directly to my phone, so I'm able to take calls from anywhere. I also use this app to start the volunteer text thread in the morning and keep in touch with volunteers throughout the day. After my day of dispatch and response, I enter all of the monk seal sightings from the day into our dispatcher data entry sheet. This allows us to keep track of where seals have been and helps us monitor their health. This is accessible to NOAA as well in case they need information on our seals. All these responsibilities have prepared me for one of my favorite parts of my internship, which is helping to train new volunteers. By the time volunteers get to me, they have already gone through a few training sessions with Lauren, so she really does all the heavy lifting. And I get to do the fun part and show our new volunteers around to different beaches and expose them to outreach. I always find myself taking the initiative to conduct outreach when I'm out with volunteers, and I'm always completely surprised when they take control of the conversation and just know so much about these seals. This is one of my trainees here, and as you can see, I'm totally nowhere near him taking the picture because he had everything under control. The many volunteers I have worked with have taught me so much about seals, outreach, and conservation, and it has been really great to work with people in a time when we have all had limited human interaction. For the last part of my internship, I created a new seal ID PDF to assist volunteers with identifying seals. So my goal here was to point out every scar, mark, and tag to help volunteers easily identify our seals out in the field. For each of the 10 seals, I provided a page of background information, which may include birth dates, any pups or siblings they may have, where they like to hang out. And then the second page was dedicated to pointing out all of their unique physical characteristics, which meant spending hours going through the Cape Kaiola Dropbox account with years worth of pictures in it to find the best pictures of each mark on each seal that I was trying to point out. This really helped me get to know the seals and become an expert in identifying them. This PowerPoint is a working document, so it can be edited whenever, even when I'm done. New seals can be easily added to it, and old ones can get updated if they get something like a new scar, for example. As an unexpected bonus, I got to assist with the transport of 2 seals back to their home islands of Oahu and Kauai. Both seals were being rehabilitated in the hospital for around a month, and once they were ready to be released into the wild, I assisted with loading the seals in their crates here and onto the Keikaiola trucks. We then drove them to the airport to be transported to their final destinations by the US Coast Guard. The purpose of my internship with the Marine Mammal Center was to assist in monitoring the Hawaiian monk seal population on Hawai'i Island and to engage the community to educate them on monk seal conservation. While doing this, I gained hands-on experience working in management and volunteer operations by operating the monk seal response hotline and organizing volunteers, and also gained exposure to working with an endangered animal. I am very thankful for my mentor, Lauren, for showing me how to gracefully work with the public and for showing me how to manage a volunteer force. I want to mahalo her for all her valuable guidance and time in helping guide my journey in becoming a professional in the field of conservation. I also want to mahalo my cohort for being there for me constantly, all KKO volunteers for sharing their knowledge with me, and Lisa Canale for being so supportive and understanding always. With that, I'll end by giving you the monk seal hotline number one more time so you have it. It is 808-987-0765. Unfortunately, Saturday will be the last time that I will be answering the phone, but I promise that Lauren will answer for as long as there are monk seals on Hawai'i Island. Mahalo.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Carmelita. That was just marvelous. I think my new favorite species is the Hawaiian monk seal, so thank you.
Yes.
So I want to invite everybody to either type a question in the chat, or if you're brave, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for the first question from the audience, do you have a favorite seal? I would think that you might. I'm just wondering if you do.
I do. Lauren just asked me this a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I do. It's Manuiva. She's a little girl. She's so cute. She just has the most beautiful coat, and she's always just like glistening in the sun.
And then can you explain a little bit about what bleach marks are?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know why they occur, but I can compare them to like a birthmark. They're just born with them sometimes, so it's just like a discoloration of their skin.
All right, audience, does anybody have a question? Oh, here's one from Dawn. She says, do monk seals eat during their molt?
To my knowledge, they don't. So they're on the beach for like 1 to 2 weeks. And again, to my knowledge, they just return to the water if they're like too hot and need to cool off a little. Because it's a pretty like uncomfortable experience for them. So they're kind of just hanging out on the beach until they're done. But Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're good. They might passively eat. You know, if an octopus happens to go past them when they're in the water, they're not going to pass it up. But yeah, they don't act, as far as we know, they don't actively eat. But my question, Carmelita, is, you know, you mentioned that you had a little bit of experience kind of with the course curriculum area, and then you came to us and you worked more out in the field in conservation. So do you feel going forward into the future, do you have a better idea of what you want to do with your future career after this program?
That's a great question. If anything, I feel like I have just a robust skill set now where I actually feel qualified to do things now. So I feel ready to find what my next step is. And before I wasn't even there. I could not imagine myself working in the field of conservation, even though it's what I loved. And I feel like I'm there now because of all of these combined experiences.
So let's check in on to our live stream. Becky, do we have any comments or questions over there? I think our live streamers are very shy, or maybe they know how to reach you, Carmelita, with their questions later. All right.
I have a question.
Oh, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Brianna.
Hey, Bree.
I was wondering, like, how long do the safety zones like typically stay up for?
Oh, that's a good question. So it depends on how long the seal is going to be on the beach, right? So we could set up the zone around them and then they decide they don't want to be anymore and they leave and then we'll take it down. But if they end up staying for an extensive period of time and it gets to around, I think about 6:30, so when the sun's setting, most of the beaches here close at 7. So we can take down all the signs and ropes and put it away because the seal will be fine on the beach because there will be no more people there. So if they stay, we keep it up until the night.
Okay, thanks.
So there's a question in the chat, and the question is from Morgan, and the question is, are monk seals usually alone when you find them? That's the question.
Yes. So usually they're alone. I used to say always, but that's not true. Sometimes they'll haul out together or you can see them playing in the water together sometimes if it's our younger seals. But mostly we do find them alone on the beach. And then I see that Doe's asking what the Hawaiian name for the monk seal is. And I honestly can't answer that. Lauren, sorry to put you on the spot again. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I can do it, but I will apologize. I'm going to butcher this. There's actually a really great YouTube, if you look it up, where little kids will sing it to you. And it's Ilio Holo Ika Ua Ua is the Hawaiian name, and it basically means dog running in rough waters. So a lot of times Hawaiian monk seals are likened to dogs because they're very curious by nature, which is another reason that we set up these perimeters around them, is we don't want them to become used to humans. We've had issues in the past where, you can imagine a pup is 25, 30 pounds, super cute. People are like, oh, sure, come play with me. But once that pup becomes a 600-pound adult seal, that's a whole different story when it's trying to hug you and play with you. So we've actually had to, not us personally, but there have been times in the past where they've been relocated because they've become too ingrained in a community and actually have, there's been some health concerns there.
Thanks, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that there's a question, what can a monk seal do if a person gets too close to them? And also that Katie asked me to do my best seal impression, which I feel like they're related because if you get too close to them, they will bark at you if they don't want you near them, which they usually don't. So in that way, again, they sound like dogs with their barks. So yeah, they'll be defensive if they feel threatened.